As we talk to teachers, we're often asked about how to use student dry erase boards in the classroom. And while there are many ways that they can be used, we want to make sure that you understand the basics. Today I'm going to lay out a few simple techniques that will help you get the most out of your student dry erase boards. Using them correctly will raise student participation and engagement levels, give you instant feedback, and ultimately it will impact your students' retention levels and raise your test scores. The first thing to understand is that the MARKERBOARD people actually offer a student response system. Some teachers use student dry erase boards to occupy and engage students. Other teachers have their students use the boards simply as an alternative to paper. Using our system, you'll find that student dry erase boards are most valuable when they're used as a feedback and assessment tool in the classroom. Formative assessment has been a real focus for educators the last several years. The goal is to build feedback into everyday teaching so that you can adapt to meet your students' educational needs each day and not have to wait for the quiz or the homework to find out if they understand. With student dry erase boards, when a teacher asks a question, every student writes their answer down on the board. At the teacher's direction, they each hold up their boards and show their answers all at the same time. At a glance, the teacher knows if the class got it or if they didn't. This allows you to know immediately if the lesson for that day is hitting home or if you need to tweak something a little bit so they understand the material better. It gives you an immediate and accurate assessment. Now let's walk through this a bit. Think of your classroom setting and how interactions with your students normally work. Think of the types of questions you ask and the types of responses, or lack of responses, you normally get. Traditionally, a teacher would ask a question, a student raises their hand and answers it. They then ask another question and another student answers. Then they call on a third student who gets their chance to respond, and so on and so forth. What can happen is over time, a few highly engaged and motivated students are participating, and many, if not most of the others, can be left behind. Our student response boards add the multiplier effect to your classroom. You still ask your questions, but the students' boards multiply the responses by a factor of 20 to 30 times. Instead of one question, one response, you ask one question and the entire class responds. We all have a slightly different style and a different set of communication tools that we typically use. But each of us need to seek feedback throughout each lesson. Don't go for more than a few minutes without asking a question that requires your students to use their response boards to answer. This approach actually allows you to tailor your lessons on the fly to help with any comprehension gaps. Sometimes it will mean you can move faster through a section that students find easy. Then you can spend more time on the next section if it proves to be more difficult. You can spend your time where it's really needed instead of wasting it. No more assuming it's okay to move on, only to find out after the test that the students really didn't understand the material. Likewise, if your class is struggling with something, you can address it immediately. Much better to have your students learn it right the first time. This eliminates the possibility of any incorrect concepts sinking in. They get it right, and they get it right from the beginning. Now, the longer you work with our student response system in your everyday classroom routine, the more benefits you'll find. You'll stop wasting time and paper on quizzes that have to be corrected and returned. Do your evaluating on a daily basis with our response boards. Save the paper for the actual test. You'll also discover that it's no longer just the motivated students participating. The reluctant ones are involved as well. Students love our boards. It gets every one of them physically and mentally engaged in the learning process. Our student response system will get 100% of the class responding 100% of the time, and all in a non-threatening, fun atmosphere. This works no matter what type of presentation technique you use. If you use a traditional overhead, if a whiteboard, a PowerPoint presentation, an electronic smartboard, or if you simply ask your questions verbally. You already have tools to communicate to your students. Give your students the tool they need to communicate back to you. Student response boards give students their voice back in the classroom.